no pressure, but I think I have to do everything in one take because I don't know if I'm actually gonna like edit it at all. And so maybe on this episode, you know, that is filmed right after the other one, I can take you through some of the details of this car, or why things are set up the way they are, and yeah, maybe just more parts about what this car is doing. I might even repeat stuff from last time, but yeah, it's a 1.6 liter 4AG, and then a 5-speed transmission and rear wheel drive. It's really light, and then you're able to drift, but without a huge amount of power. And then I had these tires. Now I can't remember the sizing, but I think what I did is I got the biggest offset tires that could fit like Prius. I think they're Prius or they're FRS size tires. So I could go to a Toyota dealership and pick up their used ones for free and then mount them, but still look like cool. And so that's its like tire sizing. And then, yeah, I used just a flux core welder, and these are some fenders like they were made in like a couple, I don't know, in a day to go to a car show. But anyways, it's one piece of metal. Well, I guess 3 pieces of metal. I cut one piece of metal and bent it, but then it looks silly. And so then I realized that lip actually gives a fender a pretty good look. And then I meant to like mount it like invisibly, but I ran out of time for the day, so I just tack welded some shit to it, and then just did some whatever self-tapping screws through it. But all this stuff sort of just has this thing where it's like supposed to be easy. So if I take off those 2 bolts, and oh, see, this is gonna be hard to like film and do shit, but yeah, so that might be awkward, and like awkward to a point that I wouldn't want to watch that. Okay, so maybe we'll take this as take 1, and I'll attach a couple things and then show you how I attach them. Okay, so on a normal Corolla, you'd have to remove this first, and then all these bolts, and then a couple bolts down there, inner fender well, bumper. Anyways, like way too many parts for me to take a look at my suspension. So the first thing I did is I just cut whatever was on the inside of this so that I could just hold it in with its 2 bolts. And then I kept 2 of the bolts up here, but then that would let this fender like flap open in the wind. And so I took a piece of L iron and drilled a hole. Actually, I think it might be a shelf bracket. But what I did is I put it there, and I'm having to beat it, so maybe I'll show this other side. So I just made a slot there with a angle grinder, and that slot corresponds to that and sits in this little notch. And then I can just put a cotter pin here, and what happens is this front part, which is just a Miata front skirt, sits here, and then all 3 points like are taken care of right there. And then yeah, obviously the screwed on fenders. And then I stripped out these front bumper clips, bolts taking off the fender originally, So my first purchase was a MIG welder. You could probably get away with an arc welder, but it's gonna have a pretty hard time with sheet metal, and most of my stuff has been messing with sheet metal. But I didn't know arc welders existed, and they can like go through dirty stuff. But I have a flux core MIG that just plugs into a normal wall socket, so it's not powerful, and I have to clean like everything super hard. But if I do it, it can work. Anyways, so these stripped out. So I just took a bolt, roughly the same that I had a nut for, and bolted it on the front. And so this monstrosity, it just goes through that hole, and then this bar sits right into here and zip ties on, and that will hold that all together enough to actually work. I had to pull the motor when I first got it, and so instead of like making the entire motor come out this hole sideways, so what I did is I just chopped the rad support, and then also used my hood pins. Like I got hood pins and did a piece of bar, and so you can remove that bar and then the radiator, and the whole engine can slide out, and so it's like much quicker and easier. But hood pins, which I just drilled a hole and then drilled another hole, they're actually kind of annoying and slow. It'd be much quicker if I just had a center latch, which would work fine. And so that is something that I'll probably end up converting. It's not really a priority issue at the time. Oh yeah, I'd already modified the front bumper. Lots of people zip tie, but I hated cutting the zip ties every time. And so I just took a box latch, and that connects to the front bumper, and it holds it just like a zip tie, but without it being a problem. And then these fenders don't have mutilated fenders because I was making them for the stock 86, which is kind of like a period correct like wheel, and also cheaper and stronger than the racing rims I've had. Yeah, I cut off all this to get the gas tank out. I kept on I've had gas tank problems my entire time having this thing. Like, so I'd started by, there's the like fuel sender hole, and then you have to pull that, but the fuel pump itself was under this part, and so at a track day it was leaking fuel from up there, and so I just cut it, and then it was hard to get at and hard to put on, so I cut out the entire back, and I should have done a fuel cell, but I didn't, like anything. So I've had a bunch of contraptions back there to make this fuel tank work, and I kept on like, I bust out one and then just like not touch it again, and then I realized that I'm always going to be scared of it, so I might as well just take apart the whole thing. Yeah, some more box latch stuff like here. To keep it down, but they're not really strong enough to keep it going. And then this was sitting out in the winter, and a shed blew down where I was storing it, but I'm still thankful I had a place to store it. So it smashed up the roof and rear window, and like there's still like some things from where the shed blew over. But then obviously, because this was all open, all the snow sat in here, and then it sat on top of the gas tank and just made everything from like ghetto to just like unusable. So I've just made it as easy as possible to use that original gas tank, because I don't need to actually spend the money if I haven't fully figured out how an OEM works. That's just like sort of a cop-out. I don't know if there's personality everywhere, as the seller tells you. This was, I think it actually is a real Nardi, which was really cool, but all the foam was, man, it's been sitting here for a while, but all the foam was, the leather was ripped off. So my weirdness actually took leather from a guy in PA, or from my hometown, and I got it rewrapped, and it was so funny because like it might just be a fake wheel, but it does seem that it's like stiff enough. But I do usually have a racing seat, so this was actually really nice to actually slide in the seat. The interior is crazy right now. I made these long time ago, and they're just like door cards, like where I was trying to have fun with it, like kind of like off of I saw a Porsche RS 2.7 RS anyways, but they just had like completely simple door cards. And I realized if I make 2 holes, I can run these, and then I drew because that's what I did. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else in here. Like, this has been terrible. This has always been terrible. Don't do this, or if you do it better than I did. I stuck this on, but I couldn't get a nut in there, so I just stuck the welder in, and it wouldn't weld to the peg, but it would weld to this, and so it's like stuck on there. But I'd already chopped it so much that it's at a bend, and so I don't want to chop it again. I'll be fine doing it now. Just originally that was demotivating. I had cut holes for more steering angle, and that was probably the worst decision I've made on this car. The roll cage is not to spec of anything, like it is terrible, but I needed to just figure out how it was done, because it wasn't going for any sort of race event, but I was playing around with it a lot. And although it's all fun and games, like I did have a harness and a roll bar. Yeah, just for safety's sake, but like realistically, I saw things at the circle track, and some of those demolition derby cars, all they have is just something that works, and it'll save this piece of tin from crushing my head, because I make mistakes, and I might make the wrong decision when driving something I've made in my backyard. What I'm gonna do next is just attach the bumper, put on the cool rims, and then actually mess with this gas tank, because what I've been using is this portable one. I made one from Home Depot. It was off of, I watched a TikTok that sort of had it, and it's just a fuel pump with connections. I put a fuse in, and a switch in there, and then you just connect the fuel holes in return line, and I could just have it sit there and I could move it around. And so I might, so I want to put everything back in here so that I could actually drive it long term, because that creates just a bunch of fumes, even with the lid on, like, and it's unsupported and it's terrible. When it'd be better just to actually clean out this tank, finally address these holes, and make a new hanger, and just make a gas tank that actually works. This thing also, the GTS also has like baffles inside of it for the fuel pump to sit, and so if you're moving side to side or driving spiritedly, the gas won't like slosh around everywhere, like, so you won't get fuel starvation as often with the GTS tank versus the SR5 tank. I guess, yeah, that's SR5 versus GTS is a big difference, but yeah, I think that's my plan. And then I'm gonna check if I can do donuts in my backyard. That would be kind of cool, but maybe I'll settle for tow this to a friend's and go play around. I know a couple of my other friends have some beater cars, and yeah.